Anyway, the overview of the plant pretty much follows the lecture. You can see we talk about the green algae. Remember, we're looking at the cladogram. Green algae, specifically charophytians, give us some of the non-vascular plants first, then the vasculature evolved. We start looking at the vascular plants, and then we'll have the seeds, and then we're looking at the plants, flowers, and the fruits, of course. So here we have waxy cuticle, already discussed it in the lecture, vascular tissue, alternation of the generations, again discussed that during the lecture, and overall divine in the 9 phyla. Again, sometimes you might see 9 divisions. It's the same thing, okay? So plant arose from green algae ancestors. That would be probably, or charophytians ancestors. So, but yeah, I think green algae will do just fine. You can say chlorophyte ancestors if you want to be more scientific one. Land plants belong to the domain Eukarya. They are eukaryotes, right? Remember that? And then, of course, it belongs to the supergroup Archaeoplastida because they have a chloroplast. Archaeos means ancients, old plastids. Supergroup Archaeoplastida and the kingdom of Plantae, plants. 3 characteristics which allow them to move to land. Once again, we just discussed them and they are outlined right here. So here we go. Waxy cuticle to prevent from dehydration, vascular tissue to support and transport of water, and the presence of apical meristems. But also remember the sporulin covering the spores, again, preventing them from dehydration. Define alternation of generations. It's a process when the diploid generation will produce haploid generation, next generation, and the haploid generation will produce diploid generation. Now, if a plant diploid, 2N, is it a sporophyte or gametophyte? It is a sporophyte. Make sure you remember that. Diploid, sporophyte. Haploid would be a gametophyte. Oops. Now, spores, haploid or diploid? Spores are always haploid, no matter what kind of spores. They are haploid. Please remember that. The gametophyte also gives rise to the gametes. Is the gametophyte haploid? Yes, gametophyte is a haploid because gametes in plants produced by the mitosis, maintaining the number of the chromosomes. So if the gametes are haploid, gametophyte have to be a haploid as well. So, introduction to the lab number 6. This is a very first group of the plants, and we'll talk about the liverwort and the mosses specifically. We already kind of talk a little bit about that in the lecture, and let's kind of take a look. This is the pictures of the liverwort versus the moss, and let's pre-lab questions. Do seedless non-vascular plants exhibit alternation of generations? Capital letter yes. Any plant, doesn't matter, seedless, non-vascular, vascular, seeded, flowering, gymnosperm, angiosperms, no matter what kind of plants, all of the plants exhibit alternation of generations. So yes. What is the dominant generation in seedless non-vascular plants? In the seedless non-vascular plants, the main generation or the predominant generation would be a gametophyte, a haploid generation. During the alternation of generations, the gametophyte produce haploid gametes, gametophyte, plant producing gametos, gametes, and the sporophyte produces spores. But what kind of spores? Haploid or diploid spores? Haploid spores. Name 3 phyla, read division of seedless non-vascular plants. And we talk about the Hepaticophyta, the liverworts, Enterophyta, hornworts, and the Bryophyta, also known as the mosses. I am not very strict if you are using Latin or English common language or common name on this level of science, on this level of botany. Either or will do. There might be a question in, let's say, lab practical. You have a picture of the moss and it will say, which phylum does it belong to? And you're saying moss, and I'll be okay with it. You'll say Bryophyta, I'll be okay with it as well. You're saying it's a flowering plant, I will not be okay with that. Okay, name 2 plants we are going to observe today: the liverwort and the moss. Why those plants popularly called amphibians of the plant kingdom? They called amphibian of the plant kingdom because they require water for reproduction. All right, table number 1. Let's kind of take a look how it, well, this is how it looks in the actual lab. You have a microscope. Usually I'm putting out a dissecting scope as well, so you can see a closer look on the preserved specimens. We have 2 wet preserved specimens of Marchantia, which is one of the liverworts, and the plexiglass block, which is another preserved, preserved specimen. This is the picture of Marchantia. You already seen that particular picture. This is the gemma cup. This is the thallus. So in this particular case, this is the preserved specimen. You can see that the thallus, and this is the gemma cup. Inside of the gemma, same thing. Gemma cup, this is the thallus. So is the body plant haploid or diploid? This is the non-vascular plants. The predominant phase is gametophyte. Gametophytes are always haploid. So haploid. This is a gametophyte or sporophyte. I just told you it's a gametophyte. The plant body of Marchantia is called thallus, right here. Now, drawing of the part. You don't really have to draw. You can snap a picture of that. Very, very easy. And then all of that, the body, the leafy part is the thallus. And that particular cup-looking structure, you're looking at the cup from the top. That's why it's so nice and round. You can kind of see that it's a cup looking on that one. So that's the gemma cup. Inside of the gemma cup, you will see a tiny little bitty pieces of essentially the thallus of the same plant, and then known as a gemma. And this is where the question is going. What is the function of gemma? Asexual reproduction. So within that cup, you have a pieces, right? The water hits the gemma lens right next to it, start growing into a genetically identical organism. So now we have 2 twins. Asexual reproduction. Gemma haploid or diploid? The gemma would be a haploid. So here we're looking at the pictures. Please do not copy and paste that particular picture. It has been done for you as a reference. This is the cross section of the gemma cup. So before we were looking from the top, now it's a cross section. So all of that right here is the thallus, and this is the cup looking structures. That's a gemma cup itself, and those pieces right here are the actual gemmas. They are genetically identical. The cells, if you look at the genetic code, the DNA would be identical to the parent plant. So if they are genetically identical, that's asexual reproduction, because remember, sex involved the the genetic difference. So once again, water drop hits, splashes it all around, and they start growing into the separate organisms. So the whole that particular structure is the gemma cup and the gems looking structures, essentially asexual babies, clones. If I would be a liverwort, and I am not, I belong to the very different part, I would have, or somewhere on my body, I would have those particular cup-looking structures. And inside of it, there will be tiny little bitty mini-me's. And then the water comes, and then mini-me growing into a me, so to speak, a second, third or fourth, etc. That's why they be able to cover the areas or comfortable areas relatively quickly with the clones of themselves. Any questions, any problems on that? All right. That was asexual reproduction, right? Everybody remember that. That's asexual reproduction, producing the identical parts. So here we have the reference for you, gemma cup, and then the thallus. Now, second table, talking about sexual reproduction. So now we start looking at the sperm-producing structures, antheridial, egg-producing structures. Again, remember, egg right here, yeah. Egg-producing structures right there, so male, female, gametophyte. And we'll start with overall preserved slide, or preserved specimen. You can see the thallus, and then the umbrella-looking structures start growing out of that. Okay, how can you differentiate between male and female gametophyte? Look at the shape of gametic head. So right there, you will need to take a closer look on this. And I will tell you that usually the male antheridial head, so to speak, will look literally like an umbrella with a covering. Now, whenever you're looking at the female one, it will look like a tiny little bitty palm tree. It will continue, but it will have a breaking down, and this is where the eggs will be located. And I'll show it to you momentarily. So here we're looking, see, this is the head, and in this particular case, you'll see the antheridial male, and this is the female part, or female plant. So here we have, this is the male, as you can see, look like umbrella, and that one look like a tiny little bitty palm tree. That's a female, that's a male, and that's, of course, is the thallus and the gemma cups on there. So here what we're looking at. So here we have the thallus, that's a female, that's a male, and that one, the female organism, but already have the sporophytes growing on it. So how you can differentiate the shape? A female look like a palm tree, while the male antheridial head to begin with is a male. So antheridial head looks more like umbrella. What type of the antheridial head produce? Sperm. Why? Because there is no egg. If there is no egg, it's a sperm. Here you'll see the egg inside. Do you see the egg inside? Yes, you see the egg inside. Therefore, it will be producing eggs. And yes, I know it's misspelled, but it's a visual how to remember which one produce what, right? Hopefully everybody understand that. Which one do you think produce more reproductive cells? Well, we're going back to the regular meiosis, which you should be covered in Bio 1. And in this particular case, which one will produce more cells, eggs or sperms? Sperms will produce literally millions in animals. Same kind of idea. It's not exactly the same, but it's again kind of convergent evolution, because again, sperm have to swim to the egg, right? Egg is usually a larger cell. So in this particular case, in order to increase the probability of sperm ended up somewhere near the egg, you have to produce literally millions of sperm, because the sperm is delivering its payload to the female. Female stays within the archegonia, and the sperm have to swim. So that particular drop of water have to bring it to the specific part of the plant. The percentage of that is very, very low. So to increase the plants and later on the animals producing millions of sperm. So in this particular case, now you're looking at the cross section. So here we're looking at the female archegonial head. Let me kind of, they flip. So here's we're looking at the anteradial head, and now in anteradial head, we're looking at the cross section of the anteradial head. Within the anteradial head, we'll see those particular structures, the purple structures known as the anteridium, a single one. And several of them will be anteridia, plural. So we're looking essentially at that, but cross-sected, right? So, and a tiny little bitty dots inside of those purple bags. I don't know if I have a bigger, no, I don't. So inside of that, there will be a tiny little bitty dots, purple dots inside of it, and that's the single sperm. So that one contains thousands upon thousands of sperm. Each one of the anteridium contain a lot of sperm. So the water drops, the sperm released and have to swim to the archegonia. What do the anteridia make? What type of the cells? Sperm cells. And of course, just in case you don't remember, that would be a haploid cells, right? Haploid. What do the sperm need to reach the egg? It have to swim. In order to swim, it have to have water, H2O, dihydrogen monoxide, DHMO. It's the same thing, water. It's a scientific name for water, right? Write it down, guide 6, flip, anter and arche. All right, now again, drawing the archegonial head. Do you have to draw? Not really, no, you don't have to draw the archegonial head. Here we have it nicely taking picture for you. I took a picture of archegonial head, but this is not what you need to take a picture of or print screen it right here. That one. This is the cross section of the archegonial head, the cross section. And now you start seeing the actual archegonium. That structure right there, this is another one, this is another one. This is the archegonium, or archegonium plural now. And you can see the channel, and this is where the sperm will be traveling, swimming. And that would be the egg right here. This is the egg right there. The sperm comes in, we'll get the fertilization process going, and then we'll start seeing the sporophyte growing on top of the archegonial head right here. Will start growing out. So let's see, you're taking picture of that. Archegonial head, the whole structure. Archegonia would be those structures containing the eggs. What does archegonium bear? Archegonium bears the eggs, right? Eggs are haploid. Now, after the fertilization occurs, you can see that the multicellular embryo will start growing, and eventually it will grow into something like that. Used to be archegonium, which has been fertilized. Now you have all of that structure right here. And that's a single sporophyte. That's another sporophyte. That's another sporophyte. That's another sporophyte, and that would be one more sporophyte. So as you can see, they're growing straight out of the body of the female gametophyte. So here's the sporophyte, and that would be spores. So foot is the place where it's attached to itself, right here. That's the foot. Attaches to what? To the female gametophyte with the foot. Then there is the seta, the body kind of, the stem, if you wish. It's not a stem per se, that's why it's called seta of the sporophyte. Now, all of that around thing right here, all of that, that's the capsule. And within the capsule, you'll see tiny little bitty purplish dots. That's the spores. So that structure is haploid. The spores are, oh, that structure is diploid. It's a sporophyte. The spores are haploid already. Spores are going around, ended up in a comfortable environment, will start growing into a new thallus. Well, first protonema, then thallus, and then the cycle repeats itself. Make sense? Any questions, any problems? So let's see, is the sporophyte independent of the gametophyte or dependent? It's actually attached. It depends on what? On all of the nutrients comes to the sporophyte from the gametophyte. Like I said, a parasite. What does the capsule contain? Haploid spores. Oh, are those cells haploid or diploid? Well, haploid spores by definition would be haploid. Why would spores called myospores? Because they're produced by the process of meiosis. Remember, the seta right here, the cells initially diploid, but then the meiosis producing those spores, and within the capsule will be filled up by millions of haploid spores. And yeah, this is how the female archegonial head looks like, and this is the sporophytes. You can see the yellow drops, that's the actual spores. So yeah, placenta is the place where it's kind of getting all of the nutrients, same kind of idea what mammals have, but it's not exactly the same structure. Again, convergent evolution. Food set, and then the capsule with the spores. Now, mosses. Gametophyte and a sporophyte. So if you're looking at the green part, that's the gametophyte. If you're looking brownish kind of stalk with a capsule, that's the sporophyte. Is the leafy part of the plant is a sporophyte or gametophyte? That's the gametophyte. Is the gametophyte haploid? Yes, it is. It's not diploid. Gametophyte produce gametes, gametes haploid, so gametophyte have to be haploid as well. Well, all of you most likely seen the mosses. We have, I literally have it in backyard, and we have usually a different types. So all of that green stuff is the gametophyte, and usually they don't grow too long, couple of inches tall. Usually they are much smaller than that. So here we're looking at the, well, that one is drying out, but that's all of them are gametophytes. So now in the preserved specimens, you're looking at the gametophyte. Here we have a gametophyte, and now that's the sporophyte, this the capsule part. So, and it's growing out of a female. So whenever you'll see the moss with the sporophyte growing out of them, that's a female, because there was like Can you tell the difference between male and female? Can you say if it's a male or female? Kind of hard. It is possible to tell if you look under the microscope and you are in that particular field, but I would not be able to tell right away. But as soon as I'll see something growing out of the moss, I can say, well, that's a sporophyte growing, so that must be the female gametophyte. So observe the moss, anteradial head, sperm. We'll talk about that momentarily. So here we go. Can you tell if this is a male or female? I probably will not ask you that. But as soon as we'll start seeing the archegonial head, so here we're looking at the archegonial head, and let's kind of take a look right there. So in this case, very similar on the very top now of the plant, of the gametophyte, we'll start seeing those now bluish sperm sacs. Those ones are known as the anteridia, and they contain sperm. So here we go. We can see tons of tiny little bitty dots. That's the sperm. Again, a lot of them. So sketch and label. The whole thing is the anteradial head. One of those sacs would be the anteridia, or anteridium, I should say. Each one of them all together, they are anteridia. And then the sperm are tiny little bitty purple dots inside. So here we go. See how much sperms each one of those contain, anteridia. Now at the archegonial head. Archegonial head will have the archegonia, which is much lower in numbers, and you can kind of see that this particular structure, it has a channel. You can see the channel, and that one is the egg. Same kind of idea. That one, the egg is developing right here, haven't been developed yet. Right there, it's probably already has been fertilized, and you can start seeing the sporophyte start growing. But this is where the egg used to be. This is where the egg, and here you can still see the egg. And then again, sperm require the water to swim to the egg. All right, so in this particular case, anteradial, we got the archegonium. Archegonial head is the whole thing, and then you will see the archegonium, a single one, and then the egg. I think I have a close-up, so here we go. That's the multicellular gametangia. You can see it's made out of many cells. That's the single archegonium, and that's large cell is the egg. And you can actually see the channel, how the sperm will reach the egg. How many eggs do you think present in archegonium? Well, kind of easy to answer. Only one. Eggs are haploid or diploid? They are haploid. What do you call a plant that bears gametes? Carries the gametes or producing the gametes? Gametophyte. Plant producing gametes. Gameto and phytos means plant. Gametophyte. All right, table 4. Table 4 is kind of talking about the now sporophyte. You will see the stalk, sometimes referred to as a seta. Again, remember that particular kind of stem-looking structures from the Marchantia. In this case, it will be a much longer. So here, what we're looking at, here's the sporophyte growing on. So here's a sporophyte growing on a gametophyte. And this is a sporophyte itself. So the stalk, seta, and the capsule. On top of the capsule, you will see the kind of the top of the capsule known as the operculum. So seta, the stalk, capsule itself, spores. Spores you will not see right here, but here you can see definitely. So here we're looking at the stalk, the capsule, and the top, kind of like a hat, is the operculum. So here what we're looking at, seta, capsule, stalk. In the cross section, so again, this is a part of the seta. The whole this structure is the capsule. The very top part is the operculum, And now right here, it's the same thing. You start seeing tons of tiny little bitty dots. These dots are the spores. All right. And whenever the spores are ready to disperse, the upper column will open up and the spores will release through the air, and hopefully they will end up in comfortable conditions in order to overcome the odds they're producing tons of those particular spores. All right. Any questions, any problems on that? We're almost done. What reproductive process produced those spores? Meiosis, MEI, meiosis. That's why they called meiospores. Spores are haploid or diploid. They are haploid. Will those spores grow to produce sporophyte or gametophyte? Since they are haploid, they'll produce the haploid structures, and haploid structures known as the gametophyte. So sporophyte will produce spores, spores will produce gametophyte, gametophyte will produce gametes, the fusion of the gametes will produce zygote, the first sporophyte. Alternation of generations. And this is where the first post-lab review question is talking about, do bryophytes exhibit alternation of generations? Yes, they do. All the plants have that. Are the green patches of moss you might see in the woods primary sporophytes or gametophytes? For the moss, whenever you see the green one, it's a gametophyte. For the rest, or most of the plants, it will be a sporophyte. Yes, they're weird like that. Now, is the sporophyte haploid or diploid? Sporophyte are always diploid, so they can produce haploid spores. Gametophyte bears the male gametangias called what? Antheridium, right? Or antheridium. We talk about that right here somewhere. Antheridium. Antheridium on the male gametophyte produces sperm. And archegonia produce eggs. Is zygote the first cell of sporophyte or gametophyte? Once again, you're looking at how many set of chromosomes have. If it's a single set of chromosomes, haploid, it would be a gametophyte. If it's a double set of chromosomes, then it's a diploid, therefore it will be sporophyte. Zygote is the merge of the egg and the sperm, so it will have a double set of chromosomes, one set from the egg, another set of the from the sperm. So double set of chromosome, therefore it is the sporophyte generation. Name the type cell of division taking place in the sporophyte and mosses in order to make spores. So spores are haploid, remember that, right? Sporophyte is a diploid, so the diploid structure have to produce haploid structures. What kind of cell division we know for that? And that would be meiosis, right? M-E-I. Which generation is dominant generation in the liverworts? Basically, which one is green, which one you see most of the time? That would be a gametophyte. For the rest of the plants, whatever you see, you're looking at the sporophyte. Again, remember, biology is the science about all kinds of exceptions. So in this case, they started with the gametophyte predominant, and then they switched to the sporophyte. They start from the haploid predominant, like fungi, and then they switch to the predominant form of the diploid sporophyte as the animals. So We just talked about the gametophyte. Question number 9, where would you find spores in both Marchantia and moss? You will find it in capsule of the sporophyte. What generation do the spores give rise to? Spores are haploid, so they'll give the rise to the haploid generation, and haploid generation known as the gametophytes because they produce gametes. And we are essentially done, guys. Good job. Of course, reflection questions. Please reflect. Give me the idea, because some of you, well, I'm talking about not in your class, but overall, some of the students say, I don't know where I can use it. Well, think a little bit, reflect. Like, what the main purpose did you do? Moss. What what has been learned to observe? Moss and liverworts. How can you use, modify, or apply this concept in real life? I do not know. That's not the reflection questions. Please, that's not the reflection answers what I'm looking for. I would deduct the points from that. And yes, I will deduct 1 or 2 points. Sometimes if you'll just leave it blank, I will deduct like 3 or 4. But over a period of time, lab after lab after lab after lab, those particular points accumulate. So please, please make sure that you are giving some thoughts into that. All right. Any questions, any problems at this particular moment? If not, we are done with the lab. Shoot me the email if you have any issues or any problems.